Oh, other than.
We're good. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our presentations meeting of August the 4th, 2026, and hope you're all having a wonderful summer. The temperature's just starting to heat up for us now, so we're in for a wild week. I will ask our CAO for the roll call, please.
Thank you very much. So we start with the chair, Deputy Mayor Sanderson.
Present.
Mayor Blair.
Present.
Councillor Weatherby.
Present.
Councillor Richardson.
Present.
Councillor Cooper.
Present.
Councillor Johnson has sent regrets. Councillor Liggett. Present. Councillor Martel.
Present.
Councillor Patton has sent regrets. Councillor Benoit.
Present.
Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Have quorum.
Thank you, Dan. In peace and in friendship and in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge that Colchester County is in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq. We have one presentation tonight from Urban Systems regarding our active transportation strategy. Presenters are joining us virtually, Jamie Hilland and Owen Seifert. And I can't see you, but I presume you're there. The floor is yours.
We are there. Thank you. Well, I am here. Owen sends his regrets as well, in addition to some councillors, and I will give you a weather update from Manitoba. We have been hot, and so I'm glad that we've sent it east so you folks can have a nice summer as well, as much as we can. So I understand I'm the only presentation tonight, so I will try and make sure that I give you as much in-depth explanation as I can. I do have a tendency to talk fast, so if I am talking too fast, please do feel free to let me know, but I will endeavor to do my best to keep the pacing to a decipherable level as much as we can. And so, yes, good evening, councillors and mayor. I appreciate you folks coming out on this Tuesday afternoon after a long weekend. And so hopefully you all folks all had a good time. And we're going to talk through today about the active transportation, sort of what went into it, some of the outcomes, and also some of the implementation pieces as we're going along. And hopefully we can keep it interactive and interesting as we go. So, agenda for this evening, we'll do a quick introduction about it, the active transportation strategy, talk about how we developed the strategy, some of the network components and recommendations that are coming out of it, how we envision the strategy be implemented going forward, as well as a summary and next steps to help guide future investments. So, why is active transportation important? And this is really representative of a lot of what we heard as well. Number one is the safety components. Rural roads and village main streets often carry people walking, rolling, cycling, and driving in the same constrained corridor. And sometimes you can get some potential conflicts happening in there. So as much as we can into transportation planning and design, we are trying to separate out user types because we know that that helps improve road safety. Health and access, providing just an opportunity for folks to walk or bike to amenities that are locally available to them. And also transportation options for people who are unable or prefer not to drive. And what it alludes to the next component here is the equity piece, as we heard a lot about transportation poverty, and we understand that the cost of vehicle ownership is quite high, and we know that the cost of living has really driven up, and so not everybody can afford the cost of private vehicle ownership. So it behooves us to really try and make sure that we're providing facilities for them as much as possible and where possible, so that they can travel around the community as well, even if they don't own a private vehicle. Similar to that is community connections. And so really trying to get people to link with their local community as much as they can. So schools, parks, employment services, recreation destinations, and also an opportunity to interact one-on-one, with members of the public as you're going by. A lot of face-to-face interactions happen. And then also we want to make sure that active transportation for this one is implementation ready. So this will give Colchester a clear framework to pursue external funding opportunities. A lot of external funding opportunities, particularly in the realm of active transportation, do require an active transportation strategy to be adopted or on the books. And it allows you to develop some of those partnerships and then undertake identified community improvement projects, kind of an understanding of what's important for the community. All of these priorities that we're going to be talking about today have been really driven by community feedback and really directed by it with a bit of oversight from administration and the consulting team. So what is the active transportation? So it's a strategic guiding document. It's not meant to be overly prescriptive, but it's really to help you guide future investment and endeavors and initiatives in the realm of active transportation. So it's going to give you a sort of a roadmap of the goals and objectives for improving active transportation in both Colchester and Bible Hill. The strategy will does identify visions and goals for active transportation, a long-term active transportation network, design guidance for active transportation facilities that is compliant, obviously, with Nova Scotia Public Works and Transportation Association Canada, as well as priorities for implementation and investment in new facilities and programs so that you can plan accordingly. And one thing that comes up lots, and this is really prescient these days with the advent of e-bikes and e-scooters, et cetera, is what is active transportation? And really the definition is anything that's sort of human form transportation. So walking, sometimes with the support of a mobility device. We talk about cycling, obviously, a lot as well. And then micromobility devices such as pedal-assisted electric bikes, speed-limited scooters are also considered active transportation modes because they are using the same facilities. And a lot of folks these days, electric bike sales in particular, have really, really grown over the past 5 to 10 years. And we're seeing a lot of folks that previously were not cycling getting electric bikes because the range is so much greater for them and the ease of which they can be used. So that's part of the definition of active transportation. How do we envision the active transportation strategy being used? So the active transportation strategy will guide project selection and ensure impactful investments in active transportation. So what does that mean? It's going to help you identify sort of projects that the community has identified now and understand what their priorities are and ensure that those investments in active transportation are impactful. We want to make sure that the dollars that we spend and the facilities that are constructed going forward result in some of that uptake and usage that we want to see or are not kind of sitting off by themselves. These are really where we see people connecting to important community facilities in close proximity to some of those population nodes. Secondarily, it's going to recommend updates to planning documents and help guide land development towards providing desired active transportation facilities. So as Colchester grows and new developments are happening, how do we integrate them and include them in the active transportation network? And how do they consider active transportation in the planning design of those communities as well? Thirdly, you want to increase participation in the number of active transportation users and really drive some of that mode shift as much as we can. And again, alluding to the previous point, electric bikes in particular have seen a lot of people have stopped driving as much or gotten rid of that second car and shifted to electric bikes because the range is so much greater, which makes it obviously easier on your roads, less congestion, less wear and tear on the roads, obviously, as an impact, and also more community connections as you're seeing there. We also want to link residents to key destinations in the communities, such as the rec, schools, some of the employment centers, et cetera. And we also want to prioritize infrastructure and support community education involvement in active transportation. So a lot of piece that we're going to talk about today is the culture shift about that, is really seeing active transportation as being a normal everyday activity that folks are going to use regularly as much as they can. And lastly is communicating some of the priorities for active transportation to the provincial and federal governments. Province in particular, as we know, most roads in Colchester are owned and managed by Nova Scotia Public Works. So they want to have an understanding of what Colchester and Bible Hill see as being priorities for the community. And then also strengthen some of those future partnerships and funding opportunities. And as we talked about on that first slide, having an active transportation strategy will allow you to apply for more funding opportunities. So what's included in this strategy? The Municipality of Colchester and the Village of Bible Hill. Not included on this one is the town of Truro. They have their own active transportation strategy that was approved in 2023. Millbrook First Nation is developing their own active transportation strategy, so that's in process. The town of Stuyaki does not presently have an active transportation strategy, and Tatamagouche has an active transportation strategy. It's been in progress for a while and hopefully will be completed in the coming months. Questions at this time before we jump into strategy development? We're feeling good? Okay. No questions? Nope. Okay, perfect. Great. So let's, how do we develop this strategy? So back last year, and I think I remember meeting with a bunch of the counselors at the time, of you folks, we did the project launch and learn. And so that was in September of last year. In October to December timeframe, we did a lot of first round of our community engagement, and that was really broad engagement to kind of ask folks to understand what their priorities were in the community, what areas they felt were important for us to examine, what locations specifically, what they thought about active transportation in terms of a culture component, and what they saw as community priorities for investment going forward. Based on that information, we went back, and from January to April, we started writing down what we kind of reflecting back what we heard. And then in April of this year, we had an extensive second round of community engagement. And really, we reflected back what we heard in the first round of community engagement and asked folks to kind of say, is this a good idea or bad idea? What did we miss? What do we really hit on the head? And what do you think needs further emphasis? And that was specific to specific corridors, locations, facility types, some of the programming pieces that we talked about, and really reflecting that back to the community, and then kind of refining from there and preparing the final strategy over the last several months. And then we envision that next month, now that we're in August, we'll start with some of the implementation. And we're also doing, as we'll talk a little bit about in some of the network components, some of the functional design, which is the beginning design stages for 5 facilities throughout Colchester. So in the first round of engagements was quite extensive, thanks to Kayla. I'll give a big shout out to her as well for doing a number of extensive community walk audits with a great number of participations there. We did several open houses. We had an online survey. We had an online interactive mapping tool. We held numerous interest holder workshops with local organizations and nonprofits. We're going to get to that next slide. We met with regional partners, including Nova Scotia Public Works, both at the regional level and at the provincial level. We met with members of council as well in that time frame. And we also met with the Village Commission. So we really heard from a lot of the important, both local residents and also organizations throughout the region there. In the second round, we had a public presentation that I think many of you folks were at in the very same room that you're sitting at there, that was streamed live on YouTube as well. We had public open houses. We had pop-up information tables at the rec and other locations throughout Colchester. We had an online survey. We had another interest holder workshops as well, several of those. More meetings with regional partners, and another presentation to the Council and Village Commission at that time. Engagement participation was great. So we had 60 walkout participants, and again, shout out to Kayla for organizing that. We had over 500 survey respondents, so a good cross section of the community. We had 81 folks attend the open house and pop-up events attendees. And then we had 29 different interest holder participants representing all the organizations that you see on the right. So we talked to Truro, Stewiacke, Nova Scotia Public Works, Tatamagouche, Millbrook, and Cycling Nova Scotia. And then all those nonprofits listed along there to really try to understand what some of their members identified as community needs when it comes to active transportation. And really, we wanted to emphasize that this is a strategy that reflects resident experience, staff and partner insight, and interest holder feedback as much as possible. What did we hear? A lot about safety and comfort. People really want safer routes where walking, cycling, rolling, and driving interact in a safe manner, especially in community nodes and along higher speed corridors. Safety was really identified time and time again by a lot of folks that were very, very interested in being able to even walk around the community or bike around the community as being a major barrier that just did not feel safe sharing the roads with vehicles. Either the volumes or the speeds were perceived as being problematic and uncomfortable for them and a risk for them to be engaging in those activities. A lot of folks just expressed a little frustration and some challenges with, even walking or biking to school, local parks, employment, services, recreation, other daily destinations throughout the community, and that there was just no connecting facilities for them. And so they really saw that as being a barrier as well. Residents also wanted transportation options that work for people of different ages, abilities, budget, and comfort levels. And again, going to that equity component as well, a lot of folks indicated that they could not afford private vehicle ownership, and they felt really that they wanted to have facilities that enabled them to walk or cycle or travel around in a manner that for folks that don't have a private vehicle. Also, we talked a lot about regional connections. We heard a lot about that. Connect village, main street nodes, and rural communities, while also being realistic about distance zero jurisdiction. And respondents were really pragmatic about, they recognize that in the Colchester particularly, sometimes the distances are quite vast. So we can't have, multi-use paths and sidewalks everywhere, but they were hoping that for some areas where there's a main street node or rural communities of greater density, that some of those facilities would be considered part of that. And then also process understanding. People really want to understand residents and council, particularly when we talk to council members, better understand how project is prioritized, evaluated, funded, and advanced over time. And so we've done as much as I can in the document itself, the strategy, which I believe you folks already have a copy of, and also throughout this presentation to kind of understand how projects will be prioritized in the future going forward and develop a framework for that. Some of the strategic directions, obviously here, some of the guiding principles as a result of that feedback. We're designing facilities and planning facilities that were inclusive, safe, connected, high impact. So areas where we saw really value in those investments and not kind of just placing them on an ad hoc basis, and also sustainable so that they were able to be maintained and taken care of on time. And the vision statement that we developed with sort of community partners and administration was our active transportation network supports safe and inclusive walking, rolling, and cycling. We prioritize connectivity to daily needs, including education, employment, and services. Active transportation is an attractive option for as many people as possible in Colchester and Bible Hill, contributing to livable and welcoming communities. Out of that, we developed some of the strategies and actions, which are a key component of the active transportation strategy document that you folks are looking at. these are some of the highlights that we wanted to kind of emphasize here, some of the really planning strategically. So enabling staff and leadership to support and then act the ATS. So make it a feasible, executable strategy, right? Not one that's kind of a pie in the sky one. Make sure that we're aligning municipal and village policies, bylaws, plans, and strategies with active transportation so that when you are planning, again, new communities or road projects or other developments like that, that you are considering active transportation as part of that. And then also investing financially in active transportation to make sure that you are building out that network over time. Secondly is building intentionally, so designing for a positive active transportation experience. So basically making sure that the active transportation facilities that we design in the future result in a comfortable, positive experience and aren't endangering people or making it a negative experience for them. The second one under that is strategy B2 is building a connected active transportation network. So really that folks can have some faith that they're going to be able to move around Colchester and Bible Hill and not suddenly be dropped off or have a gap where there's no connectivity. And that's kind of a long-term vision for it as well. And then strategy B3 is maintaining the active transportation network year round. So design facilities that can be maintained. I come from a really winter city myself. And so a lot of the designs we do here do need to consider winter maintenance and also summer maintenance as well in a manner that is consistent with the operational facilities and capacity of public works. And lastly, we wanted to make sure that we engage meaningfully going forward. So facilitating equitable public engagement and communication about active transportation. So targeting some of those groups that may not be always up or following along with council goings-ons or administration activities, and so that we're intentional about how we communicate that. Collaborate and partner on active transportation initiatives. A lot of the local groups, nonprofits particularly, wanted to be involved in some of these programs in terms of rolling them out. They saw as a real benefit for their members and the people that they serve, and so they want to be able to collaborate and support some of those. And lastly, we want to strengthen active transportation culture and encourage participation. And again, some of that normalization component of making sure that people really see it as a regular activity that anybody could kind of walk or bike. It's as much as you might grab your keys for your car, you might also be inclined to grab your bike helmets and your shoes and hop out the door. And we're going to talk next about the network. Any questions at this point? We are feeling good about how the strategy was developed.
Yes, we have a question from Mayor Blair.
Sounds great.
Yes, and yes, you do speak quickly.
Sorry, yes.
But when you were talking in terms of consultation with regards to safety and comfort, did anyone speak with you about the type of clothing they should be wearing or the visibility of the bikes that they're driving? This is from the driver's perspective and making sure that they are visible to the motoring public as opposed to, to anyone. Night driving, especially wearing a black outfit when you're at night and you don't have any light on the bike or something like that. Has anyone spoken with you in your consultations with the public about the visibility of the bike rider?
Yeah, it certainly came up as part of the culture conversation, particularly people that are not able to afford private vehicles. Sometimes they can afford a bicycle, but even small things, purchases such as a bike light, for the front and back to make sure that they're visible, was viewed as a challenge. And so that's some of the programs that we've seen in other communities that we've worked on for active transportation strategies, is either supports or funding to ensure that people have access to some of those safety components, so to increase visibility. So yeah, it was definitely part of the conversation.
No further questions. Oh, sorry. Did you want to follow up?
Yes.
Yep.
And did you come up with solutions for that? Are you thinking in terms of funding programs, or has anything been mentioned along those lines?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sorry. Definitely that was part of the culture component, and also the partner organizations discussions was looking for opportunities where we could provide lights or other safety components to folks that, again, a cost was a barrier for a lot of these folks. And so it's a suggested initiative to kind of explore. We've definitely tried to address that as much as we can.
Thank you.
And when you say we, do you mean the municipality, Jamie?
Yes, I'm using the royal we there for sure. Yes. Municipality. Yeah. And the project team most broadly. So when I say we, yeah, that's kind of what I'm referring to.
We have another question from Councillor Benoit.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Not a question. Thank you for your presentation. I was reading through a larger portion of it and it was quite, there was a lot to it. But I just wanted to mention on Mayor Blair's, what she had mentioned when we did our walk arounds, Kayla and her team had spoke a little bit on that, and they had some light reflectors. I don't know what specifically you call them, but she had mentioned that as well as something that people should be wearing when they're out, because I agree, I've seen many people at nighttime walking down the road in black and nothing to see them, and sometimes you don't see them until you're right on top of them, so it's definitely a danger for sure.
We
Great,
have
thank you.
another question or comment from Councillor Leggett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Legalities of ridership. There has certainly been a significant increase in these e-scooters running around the neighborhoods that are running down the sidewalks at 40 kilometers an hour, or on the road at 40 kilometers an hour, whatever they can get, these kids can get out of them. So when you start, where is everybody supposed to play the game? Who's supposed to be on the sidewalk and who's supposed to be on the road? And what are the legalities of riding a scooter on the road as far as helmets? I obviously know most people do not have bike insurance, cycle insurance, but it seems with the emerging growth of the e-bike or the e-scooters and e-bikes, there's a lot more swifter traffic on the trails and paths. Thanks.
Yeah, two parts to that I would say as a response is one, that's provincial jurisdiction, and I know many provincial governments are introducing new or revising legislation to address ridership, particularly for e-scooters. We're seeing in emergency rooms, a lot of them, the majority of injuries are coming particularly from children that are riding e-scooters at speed and falling off at speed. They're kind of a high risk activity, and so a lot of health doctors, Canadian Association for Physicians Against the Environment, or for the environment, sorry, has made a statement kind of like really cautioning that as something, not a suggested activity. So if you know anyone who's got a e-scooter for their kid, I would give them the caveat, to be really careful about that. And then secondarily, from a design perspective, in terms of an active transportation planning professional, is a lot of the facilities are designed for, sort of a max speed of 32 kilometers an hour, and sometimes these e-bikes and e-scooters, they do have limiters on them, but they can be either worked around or are not built in. And so that's proving a real challenge for that speed variation that we're seeing between acoustic bikes, non-electric bikes, and new ones. So there's no real quick answer. I think it's an ongoing process to try and understand the impact of those micromobility devices, and both design and come up with policy that addresses some of those concerns. But it's definitely something to be considered as much as we can.
I have a quick question for you, Jamie.
Yes.
So I'll take my e-bike along the Cobequid Trail to Roby Street. I
Yep.
get on Roby Street, Death Alley, and I will not drive on the road. I get on the sidewalk. So could I be ticketed for that, being on the sidewalk with an e-bike?
Technically, you could. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So there's no bike lane on the Colchester side of Roby Street or on the town side. So, and I will not ride on Roby Street.
Probably safe.
Yeah. And that's a typical usage pattern we see time and time again, where there's no perceived to be comfortable cycling facility, and people will ride on the sidewalk just for their own personal safety. It's quite rare that we see police enforce that. It is technically illegal, but most of the time they apply sort of common sense understanding that we've seen in communities across the country of like, yeah, you're right. I mean, and Roby Street, you're right. I mean, I've even as a pedestrian walking along the sidewalk, I felt, the speed and the volume of vehicles, and it was not a space that I would certainly feel comfortable cycling on either. So, yeah, very
All right.
understandable.
Thank you. I don't see any more lights on, so I think you're safe to continue.
Perfect. Thank you. So to organize the network, we came up with 4 levels to help define and serve different purposes in the network and provide structure for future implementation that is both reflective and responsive to changing community needs. So we're going to talk a little bit more and explanations on them, but the core network is really just how it sounds, and that's what we envision kind of being as a primary one. So those in areas of greater density, as well, where the people are living, and for what we call chip journeying facilities. So those are going to be schools, major employment centers, community centers, et cetera, where people are coming and going on a regular basis. Really trying to focus on having those as being part of the core network. The supporting network is building on that framework. So it might not be the primary one that you're talking about, the core network, but really expanding that network out so a broader range of people from across the community can connect to that core network. The rural network we saw, as we know, Colchester is an expansive community with a lot of rural sections. And so the rural network is, again, some of those longer stretches where there might be less density, but there still might be a desire for some cycling and walking activities to take place from local residents. And then lastly is the rural Main Street network. And those are some of the more denser nodes that we would see. And Nova Scotia Public Works has recently revised some of their policies on what we can do and cannot do on Nova Scotia Public Works roads, particularly in the rural Main Streets areas. And so like Great Village, we would see as being a good example of a rural Main Street network. And we're going to talk about some of those examples coming up. And this is really so that people understand sort of both the priorities and also the function of a lot of these network components as we're getting into. And what would be under those facility types. And so 7 different facility types are defined within the active transportation network. And we are also trying to align facility types with the intended level of service in each network level. So walking and rolling, as you can see on that one, would then that would be sidewalks, multi-use pathways, paved shoulders, and then local traffic calming as well. So try to reduce the volume and vehicle speeds in certain areas. Cycling, again, we would see as being amenable to most of these facility types, some multi-use pathways, protected cycling lanes, a neighborhood bikeway, which again is akin to a traffic calming and signed corridor, a painted bicycle lane, paved shoulders, and local traffic calming. And under those, in terms of the applicable network levels, the core network you would see would have sidewalks, multi-use paths, cycling lanes, and neighborhood bikeways. The supporting network would have a little bit less of the protected cycling lanes, would have more of the sidewalk and multi-use pathways, as well as some bikeways, painted cycling facilities, and local traffic calming. The rural network, again, for some of those longer stretches, we would see sort of multi-use pathways being off-road out of the corridor, and then paved shoulders as well for a lot of the folks that do want to see cycling happening. And then the rural Main Street network, we would see paved shoulders and expanding sort of the right of way as much as we can to accommodate people that are on foot or on bike as much as they can. And then we have a relative cost, just to give you a sense of scale on the right-hand side of the table there. So the core network is the highest level of service for summer and winter maintenance operations. It's typically going to be oriented towards some of those denser, more populated areas as we want to see. Some of the goals of this one are direct, safe connections to key destinations and between, significant dense residential areas as much as we can. So some of those corridor examples, we just talked about Roby Street there from Titleborough Road to town boundary, as well as when that came up time and time again. Vimy Road from Farnham Road to Pictou, and then Plains Road from Hudson Street to Ventura Drive. So this is some of the examples, and you'll see the full list is obviously in the strategy that you folks have as a hard copy in front of you. And so this is a key shift in the 2026 strategy from the one 15 years ago. The network is organized by function and level of service, not just by a project timeline. So it's a bit of a definition in how we understand and approach the network development. And the icon, as you can see, sort of the fast forward icon, indicates projects that are being advanced to functional design. So Roby Street and Vimy Road, we are currently working on doing a functional design for as well to set up for future detailed design and implementation. Supporting network is a standard level of service is what currently exists, with maintenance priority varying by location and installation type. And really the goal is to provide secondary connections to supplement that core network that we just talked about in the last slide. So a good example of that is Meadowland Trail, or Meadowland Avenue, along Public Quail to Retson Drive, looking at also Kent Road and Harmony Road as well. And again, that's a bit of a shift that we're seeing from the 2026 strategy, or the 2011 strategy, sorry. Thirdly, we see the rural network. So very basic seasonal level of service. Winter maintenance would be limited or not provided, except that key nodes were identified by high usage. These are some of the longer corridor sections that we're viewing, we're envisioning down the road, lower population and maybe lower usage, but it would support some of those intercommunity connections and longer trips in some of those lower density areas. Corridor examples would be Masstown Road from Hudson to Highway 2, the Butter and Shortland Trail outside the village of Townmagouche, and Highway 4 as well. So some of those longer stretches that you're seeing with lower density of population. And then lastly, we would see the rural Main Street network with a targeted level of service that's focused on rural Main Street nodes, and winter maintenance priority focused on those nodes specifically. So shorter sections really where people are kind of stopping and gathering and walking around and exploring some of the amenities in those rural main streets as well. The goal of this is to improve safety in rural nodes, so separating as much as we can pedestrians and cyclists from the roadway, and where we anticipate higher usage for active transportation and destinations are closer together. Great Village is one that we are advancing to functional design at this time. Other examples would be Bass River, Economy, Five Islands, Upper Stuyaki, and Earltown. How do we choose all the corridors? Good questions. Through a number of different matters, basically. So input was a big driver of this one. Folks threw a lot at us. So, I'd like to see this here. I'd like to see this section here. This is important for me. So a lot of public engagement, a lot of community partners, particularly nonprofits that were sort of representing some of the equity deserving groups that was key partners. And we had really extensive conversation with those folks in particular. Staff obviously were local experts on it and kind of peeked over the shoulders and gave a lot of good, valuable input about where they thought investments should be made and corridors should be undertaken in future years. We also heard from the commission and council. Obviously, you folks shared some of your insights about where you thought investments were important in the future. And then Kayla with her extensive walk audits. We got a lot of really good, really granular information from a lot of those participants. We also did a data analysis for where we could see growth centers, some of the zoning, the key destinations, existing facilities, and then Strava heat maps. Some folks might be familiar with that. A lot of cyclists in particular will turn on Strava to chart their routes. And so you can see heat maps of where the most common usage patterns are happening right now. We also looked at conditions. So road ownership, again, Colchester does not have ownership of very many roads in the region. So trying to consider that as much as we can. We looked at speed limit. That's a big determinant, again, where a facility might be suitable and what type of facility. Posted speed limit is obviously one of the inputs into how vehicles operate and the speed and volume that we're seeing. A grade, we're not going to be putting or proposing facilities where there's an overly steep grade and people might not be able to actually make the climb or conversely the descent. Safety, again, to that component of where is there space to kind of separate out some of those road users. And then the corridor context, how is that being used and functioning right now so that we are really trying to consider all usage types when we get in there. And lastly, we did an expert review. So our design team has done a number of active transportation, both planning and design projects across the country. So we shared our thoughts on it. Also, whether the facility was a good fit for the region in terms of facility type. Also trying to make sure that the network is continuous as much as possible throughout the region. And feasibility, we're not going to propose things that are completely unfeasible, either for financial or functional reasons in terms of implementation. And then lastly is maintenance and service level. Can they be maintained on a regular basis? And next, we're going to talk about grocers maps, which is the good times. And so I think you folks would have a lot of these maps in the active transportation strategy. So if they're not showing up in great detail on the screen, you can take a look there as a secondary one. But we want to kind of walk through a bit of these and see if there's questions and comments. I'm sure this is a lot of the topics that we're talking about today come down to where are things being proposed and why. So this one is we're seeing right here is Bible Hill. There's a ton of conversation about Bible Hill. Obviously, it's one of the denser areas in Colchester. And for this one, we really envisioned kind of that core network you can see along some of those corridors there, along College Road and Pictou, and then Farnham Road to the north. And then also considering some of the developments happening just to the north of Bible Hill there. And then the supporting network being developed over time to connect a lot of those community areas to the important community destinations throughout it. So Bible Hill took up a large chunk of our conversation. Next, you see Valley, Brookside, North River. So just an expanding out sort of beyond the Bible Hill area itself, so that you're connecting some of those sort of regional communities to Bible Hill and a lot of the services that are present in the community there. Next, we would have Salmon River, just to the south of Bible Hill there. A lot of folks there were really keen to kind of get connected into that network and connect to Truro itself through walking or cycling as much as possible. So you can see that East Prince Street would be sort of a higher priority. That's the main east-west corridor there. Oh, it's all right. I have barking dog. Apologies for that. I'm just going to mute myself for 1 sec.
No.
There you go. He sounds like he's calmed down. So this one, you can see Salmon River to the south. And again, a real community priorities for them were connecting to Truro itself and connecting as much as possible to Bible Hill to the north. Next, we have Onslow. Onslow, obviously, we have the pedestrian cycling bridge coming from the Bay Foundry Discovery Center there, which is awesome. And so really connecting the residents of Onslow, utilizing that facility as much as we can. And then we also saw Ruby Street on the south end of there and the Quebec Trail from Little Truro there connecting to it. So that was a real obvious and a good priority, I think, for a lot of local residents there. Next, we saw Truro Heights, sorry, just a bit to the south there, and trying to connect into the east side of Truro, sorry, west side of Truro there. and making sure that those connections kind of made safe to where Truro also is planning future investment as well. And you can see the green on the right is some of the proposed core routes that are contained within the town of Truro's active transportation strategy. So externally, we want to connect as much as we can. So we are linking folks up with where Truro is envisioning future investment, and not making sure that folks aren't kind of, again, dumped off at the town limits. They're connecting to a facility within the town itself or a planned facility in future years. Next, we have Debert, and Debert really came up a lot in terms of connecting along McLean. Sorry, I'm going to mispronounce it there.
Gelman.
Thank you. Someone wrote there. As much as we can. And so that one we've envisioned sort of either multi-use trail and also some sidewalk connections in Debert itself, so that the folks can walk around their community. That was also identified as a priority for some of those community members in that area. And then we have Brookfield and Hilden. And again, those were connecting to some of the major facilities, again, particularly the schools you can see on this in the Brookfield area on the south side there. And really expanding some of those connections. And one thing we did envision is where there are existing sidewalks, when and where possible in future years, is expanding those to be multi-use pathways so that you are giving folks that do ride their bikes a facility that they can ride off the roadway. And that will obviously encourage, more usage as people feel safer. They're separated from the roadway, particularly as we're connecting to schools. We do a lot of active school travel planning in communities across the country. And that's one big thing that we see time and time again is that parents are kind of unwilling to see their children bike. They might live a little bit farther away, so they're forced to drive. But if their child could bike on what's perceived to be a comfortable facility, they're quite likely to let them do that as much as they can. And then this is the overall map of the network itself, as you can see. So we've striven as much as we can, or intended as much as we can, to make it pragmatic so that we are investing where it makes sense, but also link communities as much as we can. You can see some of those rural network components. Those are longer stretches. And we're envisioning those as being sort of some long-term goals so that folks can connect interregionally or intercommunity throughout the region, with a focus on some of the denser areas, again, where you're going to see some of those usage patterns really being quite evident upon implementation. Questions on that before we move on to strategy implementation?
A question from Councillor Leggett.
In your valley map there, Pictou Road is part of the blue route. But when you go up past the highway, there's a blue route sign and you go another half a kilometer and it stops and there's nowhere to go. And it's a very busy piece of road. So one thing that kind of concerns me, and I won't bike up there. Like, I enjoy biking, but there's a lot of roads in around home that I'm not going to tackle because the volume of traffic is out there. But these blue routes just disappear to nowhere. So what's your return function, right? So all well and good to have something to go to, but you got to get back.
Yeah, and Blue Route, I mean, as you probably are self-aware, and you just explained it, is really just a wayfinding, facilities. They're not necessarily any separated facilities that they're building or facilities of any kind. At this point, it's largely Blue Route, and we've worked in Lunenburg and Yarmouth as well. And a lot of the conversations were around the Blue Route and trying to capitalize on it. But it does serve just basically as a route finding right now, and doesn't actually separate users or provide, as you alluded to there, sort of the way back and a separated facility.
Question from Councillor Benoit.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This might be towards Dan or Kayla that can answer. Just in regards to the Nova Scotia Blue Route, I read that that there might be, I was just wondering if the municipality contributes funding to this, or is it only provincial government? Like, I'm thinking like the one that goes through Masstown to Onslow. I just read that in the package that was sent to us online. It said that they may contribute funding or resources of the route that may pass through their jurisdiction. So I'm just wondering, does the municipality help with that, or is it all provincial?
Dan.
Through the chair, I'd have to look at that specifically, to be honest with you, right offhand, I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, I was just curious.
I can hop in if you're comfortable with that. Yeah, typically if we have suggested or proposed facilities along blue routes with the hope that Nova Scotia Public Works will see value in contributing to it because it is a blue route. And so we've seen basically it's an increased likelihood of external funding and cooperation with Nova Scotia Public Works if the facility you're proposing is along a blue route, because their long-term vision is that it's a separated facility. It's a multi-year plan, obviously. So while Colchester may be funding a project along a certain corridor, if it's along a blue route, then that again, that just increases the likelihood of it. So where it makes sense, that's where we try to align blue route priorities with local regional priorities.
Thank you. And Kayla, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, okay. Just to add to that, so historically, Colchester has not contributed to Blue Route that's been built in Colchester County. So the province has set aside funding that has recently changed with the most recent budget. They've now significantly reduced that funding. If a municipality wanted to build more than what the province was already doing or build it out faster, they could contribute. The municipality can also ask for corridors to be added to the Blue Route. And one of the ways that you do that is by including it in your active transportation strategy.
Okay, thank you for that, Kayla. Councillor Kennedy.
Through you to Jamie. I see in your study that you're connecting routes. We don't have to take our bike on the back of our car to get to a route. Are you working towards that goal so that and it was mentioned here earlier, you get on the Cobequid Trail and when you finish it, then you're on Roby Street. Like, it just doesn't work that way because I see kids going to school and you have to tell them to go on the sidewalk because the trails aren't connected. So there is an effort, and I think I'm hearing you say that, to connect all the trails.
As much as possible, yeah, absolutely. So that basically utilizing both existing facilities, so and also trying to close a lot of those gaps in the network is what we frequently talk about, and that's what you're alluding to, and the other councils have alluded to is that you get kind of dumped off, and there's no real facility beyond a certain point, and where do you go? And that's a major barrier for a lot of folks. So a lot of it is building on the existing network to try and close some of those gaps or close the sections that connect to important community trip generating facilities. So yeah, there's a very intentional effort there.
Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher.
Through the chair, on your survey, was there many respondents from Great Village, say, to Five Islands?
Less so for sure. It was a lot of the respondents were certainly obviously in more of the populated centers, but there was some we did hear from throughout Colchester through other responses. So yes, there was some definitely from Five Islands and out west that way.
I'm gonna give my opinion on this, and I think it's a big wish to be having down that trunk to Five Islands. The Blue Route, it'll be years to be happening, because for them to pave that #2 highway and add on to that shoulder is wishing. Anyway, to drive on that highway right now is taking your life in your hands. And there has been people, one gentleman hit from there. That is just so unsafe down that way right now. And to throw money down there, we can hardly get our J-class roads done, let alone add to a Blue Route. When the communities are so far apart, usually there's like in the urban communities of that, or like the higher density population or whatever, there's usually they're driving on the shoulder. It's just the whole route down there is horrible for bicycling, to be honest. And it's just a lot of money if they were to include that for anything. It'd be a waste, in my opinion. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Our hope and intention is basically to put the lines on the map now, so that if and when road renewal projects do occur with Nova Scotia Public Works, that they understand that or at least consider the feasibility of active transportation facilities along there. And we're seeing that in other communities is when they do road renewal projects, is they're like, okay, is there a case to be made for expanding the cycling network or regional cycling tourism? That's really the objective of a lot of the Blue Route facilities. So is it a longer term goal? Absolutely, but it's one that we want to kind of make sure that Nova Scotia Public Works is aware of and does consider in a lot of the future planning and design.
Thank you.
And Jamie, did you hear in your meetings with the province some kind of inkling of their intention to consider active transportation as they're doing road renewals?
Yes. The short answer is yes, but the level that we deal with is more administrative and staff levels. So we're not dealing with like ministerial level. So I can say that at a staff level, absolutely it's a priority for them, and they were very clear and supportive of this one. Whether that actually translates into political will and action, that's I think above our pay grade.
Yeah, okay. I don't see any more questions or red lights on, so if you're wanting to continue, please
Sounds
proceed.
great. Okay, I'm just going to move us over to strategy implementation. So implementing the active transportation strategy. So it sets the table for ongoing investment in infrastructure services and resources that support active transportation, both Colchester and Beverly Hill. We want to talk about actioning high impact projects that align with the priorities for the active transportation strategy. We also really want to treat the active transportation as a living document. This is a snapshot in time. Things will change, context will change. You might have a new development that's being presented next month that we might not be aware of at this time. And how do we consider and integrate that into the active transportation network, into the strategy itself? And priorities may change. Governments may change, decision makers may change, and some of their priorities can change. So we do recommend that the active transportation strategy is kind of regularly examined, looked at, and then reviewed and updated every 5 years to ensure that it still is reflective of those community desires and priorities. And lastly, we want to make sure that we maintain momentum and collaborating with the community, neighboring communities, and other partners to improve active transportation. These discussions, I would say, really kind of activated particularly a lot of the local nonprofits and community groups to be really passionate about advocating for their membership, about providing lower cost or free transportation options in the community. And so how do we respond to that? They have some expectation that this plan will be implemented in future years. And so we really want to increase and collaborate as much as we can with those groups, because they really felt a real sense of ownership in terms of the strategy and advocating for their membership as well. So that's something we really saw as a priority for implementation going down the road. How do we choose projects? And so we kind of did a scale. This gives you a kind of an idea or a general idea. Safety was about 20% of the metrics in terms of collision history, road classification, posted speed limit. Again, that's a big indicator about comfort levels for people that are walking or biking. And again, operating speed. So there might be a posted speed. What does the roadway design tell you to operate the speed? So we all know, we've seen and driven on roads that may be signed 50 kilometers an hour or 60, but the operating speed is closer to 70, 80 if they're big and wide open. So what does that look like? What's existing infrastructure in the area, and how does this align with it? We also looked at the equity components. So we really want to focus on positive impacts for equity deserving communities, particularly on sheltered population or areas where folks have lower areas of rates of car ownership or more socioeconomic challenges as they're facing. And also the accessibility of projects. We talked a lot with folks that have mobility challenges, and really they faced a lot of significant barriers in moving around their community, because a lot of them do not have the ability to drive. And so even to go to the corner store or go a couple blocks was a real challenge for them. And so any future design projects that we're looking at need to consider and integrate accessibility as much as possible. Thirdly, we considered connectivity as an active transportation identified corridor. That was just one that one of the inputs for how we selected projects for it as well. Connecting some of those community destinations. So again, we talked about schools, places of employments, recreational, et cetera, et cetera. Also active transportation infrastructure connections. And so we talked about some of the gaps or some of the areas where it's missing sort of the last mile connection to some of those trip training facilities. And also transit connections. The transit feasibility study was recently wrapped up. And so how do we look at potential future transit locations and considering that if and when that plan is undertaken? Lastly, what are the external funding opportunities? So we talked a lot about the Blue Route. So as much as we can, aligning with future funding opportunities through the provincial government, local revenue. So connecting to some of the local businesses, et cetera. So we really want to increase business to a lot of the local shops as much as we can. And studies and research have shown that if you do provide active transportation facilities in particular, it can drive a lot of that local spending. Maintenance capacity. So we want to make sure that they're placed in locations that are accessible and the current tools and equipment of Public Works can maintain them long term. Also the feasibility of the corridor long term in terms of how it functions with multiple road users, and then alignment with other projects as Colchester and Nova Scotia Public Works are expanding or doing road renewal projects. What does that look like? And is it feasible, and does it align with some of those goals? We also want to talk a bit specifically about crosswalk location and Transportation Association of Canada. And so there's a great chart here. It's a flow chart. It's also in the active transportation strategy itself. And you can see is Basically, it's a decision-making tool. So it provides a clear and consistent evaluation of pedestrian crossings implementation. So to make sure that there's an understanding of when and where and why pedestrian facilities are being undertaken. So the Transportation Association of Canada, for those that don't know, it really provides design guidance for communities across the country. It is really the common tool. There are other local or regionally specific design guidance, but the TAC guidance is really the one that we use as the common community-wide or Canada-wide guide, and engineers and planners will refer to it on a regular basis to give us the guidance that we need. And this is also aligns with a lot of Nova Scotia Public Works guidance as well. And they have what's called a Transportation Association of Canada crossing tool, a crossing control guide, decision support tool. And you can see it on the right here. So what is the speed limit at the location? Is it over 70 kilometers an hour? Yes, it's probably a good candidate. Sorry, if it's over 70 kilometers an hour, then it would be not a good candidate for a pedestrian crossing, just because of the speeds and the stopping distance involved in that time. The 85th percentile operating speed is basically the operating speed that you're seeing. And so we talked about posted speed versus operating speed. So the 85th percentile is the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are operating at. If it's 70 kilometers or less and less than 15 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, then it still would move down that matrix to be suitable for crosswalk. And then also evaluating what the treatment type does a TAC selection matrix recommend. So if it recommends no treatment or rectangular flashing beacons, then it would move on down. Does it provide a critical connection between two existing pedestrian facilities? And so that's really a key component, is we don't want to see crosswalks at locations where there's no pedestrian facilities supporting on either side. We've seen that time and time again with some of the feedback that we've received, is sometimes pedestrian facilities are placed in locations or crossings where there's no connections on either side. And so then people are still having to walk along the roadway or walk in ditches. You're not going to see that uptake that you're having there. And so it does not make it a suitable location for those. And then is it more than 200 meters from a nearest crossing? And so we want to make sure that we're not putting crossing upon crossing upon crossing. Some of the compliance rate will drive down with drivers if they're seeing crossings, 50 meters, 100 meters away from each other. So you want to give that sort of spacing so they can recognize the distance for the next crossing. Lastly, we want to apply the local context and develop guidance that suggests sort of some of those enhanced treatments where needed to support consistent application in Colchester. So again, getting to some clarity about how and where these crosswalks are installed. Questions on that?
Don't see any.
Okay, perfect. Next, we have active transportation funding. So the intent here is to continue to fund active transportation projects through capital and operating budgets. Colchester already does allocate a portion of the budget towards active transportation. So continue as much as possible, leveraging external funding opportunities through provincial and federal government. So as Kayla talked a little bit, unfortunately, on the provincial level, and this is not a surprise to any of you, I'm sure, there have been a lot of numerous cutbacks. So the Connect 2 program, which actually helped fund the development, has been shelved, as well as some of those active transportation funding opportunities, but that may change in the future, as we talked about. The federal government is still very interested, and so the Build Canada Strong Fund does include the Public Transit Fund under that. And then subsumed within that is the National Active Transportation Fund. And so we've been applying, there was an intake last spring, and so some of the communities we work with are receiving funding for that now. And it can be quite substantial funding. They've allocated, billions of dollars towards a lot of those facilities. So that's a great one that we're seeing a lot of opportunities for in future years. Also collaborating with municipal partners and the development community to integrate active transportation infrastructure and ongoing effort upcoming projects. And so we're seeing that when we work with developers, a lot of times, if they have an understanding that they need to connect to the network or that active transportation is a priority for the community, they're more likely to consider putting in multi-use pathways and or sidewalks to make sure that their community that they're building and designing is connected to the broader network. And it does help with some of the sellability. People like being able to walk around the community, like being able to bike to the local schools as much as they possible. So making sure that's a priority for the development community. And then working with community organizations to partner on maintaining active transportation infrastructure, and then promoting that culture shift. So you can look at some learn to bike programs. You can look at, we talked about some of those safety components programs. We've talked about providing cycling bikes themselves for folks, because that could be a major barrier, obviously, from an equity lens, and really making it as accessible as possible and getting that culture shift. So celebrating the fact that we have facilities throughout the community that are suitable for walking and biking, and really encouraging people to do as much as possible. We know there's significant health impacts mental health impacts, physical health impacts, if you are able to walk and bike and integrate into your daily or sort of semi-regular routine as much as you can. And again, people who are moving at a slower speed are more likely to see things that are happening, and also try and take care of the community. They're not moving at speed. They're more likely to stop and try and really connect with their community and connect with other community members. So summary and next steps. So what's changed from 2011 is really engagement was more extensive this time. In the 2011 ATS, we had limited engagement. You saw we had 2 rounds of engagements with the public, interest holder, and council as well. The network was a bit different in terms of structure, so it was time frame based, so really sequential in terms of short, medium, and long. This one we really focused on the network levels to really build out that network in a sort of a more holistic manner that made sense. Previously, there was a narrow set of options with limited options for cycling, really sidewalk heavy focus. And so this one is much more, gives you a broader suite of facility types, including multi-use pathways, paved shoulders, bikeways, bicycle lanes, and traffic calming as well. And again, implementation in 2011 was very sidewalk heavy. So this one is a balanced evaluation-based approach. As much as possible, we want to make decisions and recommendations based on the evidence and community feedback that we received. And lastly, evaluation is how it was previously it was evaluated through safety, connectivity, and really a recreation emphasis. This one, we really tried to balance a bit more about safety, equity, diversity as well, connectivity, the feasibility and cost considerations. We know that finances are limited, and so we want to make sure that we chose corridors and recommended corridors where it made sense in terms of an impact on those investments. Next, we see the next steps. So adopting the strategy, so using it as a guiding document for future network development, funding, and future capital planning. Moving some of the selected corridors into the feasibility design, partnership discussions, costing, and funding applications. I will put the caveat, a lot of these, every corridor that we've recommended will need further study and design. As we know, we're working with specific design teams and transportation engineers to look at what's the most suitable facility type for it, dimensions, width, underlay, et cetera, and connections in terms of crossings, et cetera. So there's more work to be done under those. So that's specific for any road renewal project or road design project you're going to see as well. We did want to see as much as possible opportunities to deliver active transportation improvements through road renewal projects. There's a lot of cost saving potential, as you're seeing. If a road's being rebuilt, you're going to have construction crews on site. You're going to have a lot of common materials on site. So really using those opportunities to bring down some of those costs that you'd see with a standalone active transportation project. Any new development projects that we see are recreation and also partnership projects. If partners are looking at opportunities, particularly Nova Scotia Public Works, how do we align some of those investments going forward with that? And lastly, we want to see monitoring and updating. So how is the strategy being measured in terms of impact? So tracking some of the progress, reviewing the network service levels, and updating the priorities as projects advance and conditions change. Communities change, developments change. You have investments in some areas or divestment in some areas. And so how do you reorient yourself in some of those priorities? And that is it for the formal presentation. I have lots of time for questions and answer, hopefully some sufficient answers for you.
Thank you, Jamie. Great presentation. A lot of material covered in a short period of time, really. Can I have a motion to receive the presentation, please? Moved by Councillor Benoit, seconded by Councillor Martel. Are there any further questions for Jamie? Any comments? One thing I would mention is that we had a presentation from Scotia Pool, which is a local pool in the area in Bible Hill. And a couple of family physicians attended the presentation, and they talked about the importance of that facility in our community for mental and physical well-being. So I think if we can somehow get our health professionals on board with our new active transportation strategy, they talk to their patients and can provide advice and recommendations. And we've really got some wonderful trails and opportunities to get out for our physical and mental health. And we're really good if we had them on side. So just.
Yeah, I would say they're natural allies. We've worked with public health professionals across the country. We did a report about 5 years ago on how to integrate planning into public health planning. So they are built-in advocates for this for sure. And it would certainly be a great conduit for some of those conversations with physicians in the area. Absolutely.
Anything further? Somebody, Councillor Leggett.
Just on the active, Dan might know more about this than I do, but I spend a fair bit of time in Pictou County, and the CHAD system really seems to work well over there. And it seems like you hear about it a lot on the media, and a lot of people use it, and it seems to be very functional. And that seems to me like something that could really work, and it goes back to the Scotia Pool thing. Because they make these laps around town on a regular basis. It's not expensive. You call up the day before and you book your spot or whatever it is, but it seems to work really well over there, and I think that's a model that could have some interest for us.
Yeah, Picto's doing some great stuff for sure. Yeah.
Through the chair, and so, yes, it's become very effective through a lot of iterations to get to kind of where it was. And they did pursue some outside funding to then kind of get the model pinned down, but certainly it is very doable.
Kayla.
Thank you. I'm taking some liberties here because it's presentation night. So through the chair to Charlene, if I could speak to your comments a little bit on your area. When we look at these networks, we're not saying this is the list of every project that should be done in the next 5 years. That's just not reasonable. But we also didn't want to limit the networks to just those, 5 or 10-year horizon projects. Partially because of what Jamie spoke to is that it limits us in seizing opportunities when they do come up through either a road renewal or currently in Divert, we're putting in sewer, and we took the opportunity to make that access road for that sewer maintenance also a trail for the public to use. That's not something that we would have done historically. It would have just been seen, we're just building a sewer. So being able to have this network is going to allow us to make investments go further. So I think that's important when people are looking at it and kind of providing feedback. The other element of sort of your main corridor is that it is part of a UNESCO site, right? We have the Fundy Geoparks. So there is really high potential for there to be cycle tourism. That would be, lead bike, follow bike type style tourism. That's something that we talked to a little bit with our economic development officer. So we didn't want to leave it out because there is a lot of opportunity, but it's certainly something we can reassess if you'd like us to. You'll note the 311 is not listed there. Partially that's the grades, the lack of connectivity. You don't encounter those sort of community nodes at the same frequency as you do along that route. So yeah, just wanted to provide a little bit more background there.
Councillor Fletcher. Thank you, Kayla.
I do see the odd group of cyclists go through. Very few, and I know it is like the clips. Anyway, I'm good at, it'll be the future, a very far future in my theory, but anyway, okay, very good, thank you.
Build it and they will come.
Ultimately, the projects will be for you to decide at capital project time. That's when you'll look at your list and you'll say, yep, this is where we want to spend money. Nope, this is where I don't want to spend money.
Anything further? You ready for the question? Sure. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Fletcher, thank you. I thought you put your hand up.
Good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being with us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stay cool. Stay cool in Winnipeg.
We will do. You too.
All right. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. My residents are usually